Hallo, guten Abend, Deutsch, Studentin, Deutsch 1102. Hier noch ein Video. Diesmal lernen wir über Relativsätze und Relativpronomen. So welcome back, German 1102. This video we're going to review relative clauses, relative pronouns, a fantastic way to enhance your ways to express yourself in German, to extend sentences, create somewhat complex, more complex sounding sentences, even though they're actually quite simple once you get the hang of it. So let's get down to it. These relative pronouns, okay, they're like adjectives. The relative pronouns describe people, places, and things. What they do is the relative clause will begin with the relative pronoun, and this is going to send the verb to the end. So we've already been introduced to this concept with subordinate clauses, or even with having a two-verb sequence, whether it's a modal verb as verb 1, sending verb 2 to the end. Okay, so in a way, this acts more like a subordinating clause, a Nebensatz, right, where the verb is placed at the very end. Okay, it's similar in English is to the words who, whom, which, that. So we'll look at a few examples here. All right. So the sentence containing a relative clause begins with a separate clause. Normally at the beginning of a sentence, it contains what's called an antecedent, and this will determine the gender of the relative pronoun. Okay, a lot of times these relative clauses are broken down into two, or relative sentences, relative clause, I'll call it that, contains two parts in the sentence. An initial clause with the antecedent that determines the gender of the pronoun, the relative pronoun that is, and then that is usually starting the second clause. There are times, however, when we could have three clauses, even though it's the sentence just broken up into three parts. So we'll show you a few of those cases there. In the case of the relative pronoun reflects its function within the clause. So enough of this explanation. Let's look at some examples. Das ist der Mann, der hier war. Okay. Das ist der Mann, den Sie gesehen haben. Und das ist der Mann, dem Sie ein Buch geschenkt haben. Okay. So these are all masculine relative pronouns. And in each of these, the first one, it serves as the subject. The second one is the direct object, therefore using the accusative. And the third one, the indirect object, therefore the dative case, right? And we'll look at the chart here to kind of break this down. The plural dative is the only, so you're already familiar with this if you've seen my charts from before. The only difference here is the dative plural, okay, denen instead of dane, okay? And two, when you look at that clause, der hier, look at the back examples 1, 2, and 3. Der hier war, den Sie gesehen haben, dem Sie ein Buch geschenkt haben. There's a trick to figure out to what the gender is going to be, and I'll show you a few examples of those. But you could almost rewrite this clause if you're really stuck. You can almost rewrite that clause on the side if you need to write it out. Say, okay, I need to figure out which elements do I have, which ones are missing. Do I have a subject? Do I have a direct object? Do I have an indirect object? And usually this will fill that void with whichever one is missing. Entschuldigung. Es ist spät und ich bin sehr müde. Okay, so let's look at a few other examples. This is what I was talking about it being broken into segments of three. Der junge Mann, der mich angerufen hat, ist Lindas Bruder. Okay, so if I were to break this down, I could almost say der junge Mann ist Lindas Bruder. Okay, but it flows better if I say it this way. Der junge Mann, der mich angerufen hat, ist Lindas Bruder. In other words, we know that man, it's going to be masculine. Okay, so that middle clause there, der mich angerufen hat, I can almost rewrite that as der Mann hat mich angerufen. But because it sends the verb to the end, and in this case it sends the conjugated or Hilfsverb to the end, do remember that if you have a subordinating clause, or relative clause with multiple verbs, it's the verb one, okay, the conjugated one. So in a present perfect context, it's going to be haben or sein that gets placed at the end, or if it's a modal verb, it's going to be the modal verb that gets placed at the end. Gut. So here we have who. Okay. Der junge Mann, den ich angerufen habe, ist Lindas Bruder. Okay. Now I'm the one doing the calling, and I'm calling the young man. Therefore, ich habe den Mann angerufen, and he is the direct object. Der junge Frau, die mich angerufen hat, ist Lindas Schwester. And now we have an example with it being in the feminine. Okay, die Leute, denen ich helfe, sind unsere Nachbarn. So this one is a dative plural, but because helfen, all right, is a dative verb to help. Gut. Gehen wir weiter.